I'd like to call the Village Board regular meeting of June 17th, 2013 to order at 7:02 p.m. Can I ask Virginia Clerk Simsky to please call the roll?
Virginia, and you're not
Yeah,
going to
I
get
must say
done.
that.
Mayor Gunter.
Here.
The clerk's here. Trustee Addington.
Here.
Trustee Barker.
Here.
Trustee Barry.
Here.
Trustee Nero.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
Trustee Seneca. Here. Manager Searle.
Here.
Attorney Zemanek.
Here.
Finance Director Parker. Police Chief Mulhern.
Here.
Public Works Director May.
Here.
Acting Community Development Director Malik.
Here.
Deputy Fire Chief Connolly.
Here.
And I know Glenn Lilcherberg, our IT guy, I saw him earlier, so he's here. I believe that.
Can I ask
Oh,
everyone?
and Carlson, I'm sorry,
I'm
our
sorry.
staff
There he is, he's
accountant.
back in the back. Can I please ask everybody to please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, tonight I can give my report, since I can talk. And the first thing I'd like to do is ask our police chief, Tom Mulhern, to please tell us about cruising nights this Thursday night. Special night.
Thank you, Mayor. This coming Thursday, 6 o'clock, I was wrong on last Thursday, but this coming Thursday, 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock is our annual squad car night. Just checking this morning, we have 20 squad cars coming from around the area, and we're working and trying to get more. Lots of games and activities for the kids. Dawn King, our volunteer, has been working tirelessly on getting prizes and everything. So we ask everyone to come out and visit us. As Clerk Shimsky's fond of saying, it's a Thursday night. Get out and enjoy the weather. And it's supposed to be 85 and sunny, so we'll hopefully keep my fingers crossed. But this Thursday, downtown Burlington and Cass will be in the parking lot. We won't be on Cass Avenue. The classic cars will be there. So come on down and have a chance to see not only the Westmont officers, but officers from local communities as well. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Shannon Malik, our Acting Community Development Director, to please come to the podium. And I wanted her to explain a little bit about vacant property and our process of going about getting the land cut and taken care of.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Village Board. In general, we, at the beginning of every growing season, we'll send out letters to our known problem properties where we've had compliance issues over the year. This is to indicate that this notice is the one time that we're asking, just as a courtesy, for folks to stay on top of the mowing. This, because there are vacancies and foreclosures, is sometimes going to a bank or maintenance company. And oftentimes we get good compliance with that, but every year we seem to have a few problem properties where we have to actually go and have a contractor go and mow the property, and then we have to lien the property so that we are reimbursed for the landscape contractor services. So the typical procedure for code enforcement, we'll either get a complaint registered through our making inspections in the community, or we'll hear from a resident or a business owner that there's an issue. We'll create a ticket or a case number to follow up on. And then an inspection is made. We will reach out to the property owner, and then generally speaking, if they're local, we can get compliance quickly within a 10-day period. That's the kind of trigger point at which we aim to get them to voluntarily mow before we would go and then issue a citation. So in most of the situations, we're able to get voluntary compliance. We have a few, though, that are specifically in foreclosure, or there's been, a passing, a death, and we're having some issues getting those cut. It may seem to be slightly exacerbated right now because we're in the process of securing a new weed contractor. The folks that we used previously, one of which the prices have gone up, so we're seeking a more competitive bid. And then in the other situation, it's actually not a Westmont business, so we're looking to find someone in town, first and foremost, that can be responsive. So we're reaching out to those guys. The problem properties are so tall that normal equipment isn't really able to get in and attack the problem. So we just ask for folks' patience and bear with us as we get the equipment out there with the new contractor. In the next week or so, we should have them selected.
Any questions of trustee? I thought it'd be important that she mentioned this to the public, because there's several pieces of property right now we've all gotten questions on or emails, so thank you.
Thank you.
I have one other item, and it involves the Family Fest I think Holy Trinity has, and I'll ask trustee Barker if he'd like to talk about that this Sunday.
Yeah, we actually have our Parish Fest. It's a picnic at Veterans Memorial Park from approximately 12:30 to 9 p.m. with live music, and we're billing it as an old-fashioned picnic where we will have food provided by our friendly neighborhood Uncle Bub's restaurant with a nice picnic fare, and then we have an organization called the Legacy Girls who do music of the 30s and 40s, and we close the night with the Flat Cats, which is a local Westmont jazz and blues band. So we're excited about the day out in Veterans Park. All we need now is the rain not to come. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have. Clerk Simsky?
I just wanted to ask, is it Friday or Saturday or Sunday?
Sunday, June 23rd.
And I just want to show, the other day I saw our arborist, John, out, and he was hanging these on doors.
Who?
John Yater.
Oh, Johnny.
And he, it's where parkway trees will be removed. So people check your front doors and see if any are hanging there. He will be marking the trees, but I told him I would mention them. It's very bright, it's very hard to miss, but I thought it's well worth everyone knowing that he is walking around and he is marking the trees that will have to come down.
And it's still the emerald ash
Well,
borer,
it doesn't just say,
primarily that?
he has a lot yet.
Yeah, I know there's a lot left to do.
There are a lot of them out there, so, and like Chief Mulhern said, everybody come out. I saw so many people walking when I was coming over here today, just walking around, enjoying the day. And, cruising nights is a fun night. The Parish Fest will be a fun day, so come out and walk through the neighborhoods. You don't have to be a Catholic to go to the Parish Fest. Everybody's
Bruce will
going.
be checking at the
They'll
door.
take your money no matter what. That's right. All right,
So-
thank you. Attorney Zemanek?
Thanks, nothing tonight.
Nothing. Manager Searle?
Oh, yeah, I'll raise the executive session. We would like to have an executive session following the regular meeting on the topic of pending litigation, threatened litigation, and personnel, and I'll identify the litigation at the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Manager Searle? Oh, he still has one more.
I have nothing.
Okay, thank you. We can move on to the items to be removed from the consent agenda. Does any board member want any of the items removed?
Just the proclamations,
To vote separately.
or to read?
I will read them.
Okay.
We'll do the proclamations after
After the
we
vote.
approve the consent agenda. Seeing no questions, can I have a motion?
So move Seneca?
Second, Nero.
Any question? Roll call?
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
We have two proclamations. I'll ask Manager Searle if he could please read them to us.
I'll do so in the order as they appear on the agenda. The first one is honoring Father Larry Dryfin for his service to the Westmont community of Mays Lake. Whereas Mays Lake Village has been a leader in providing senior housing in DuPage County for nearly 50 years, and whereas Mays Lake Village is one of the largest federally funded senior housing developments in the United States, and whereas Father Larry Dryfin, Mays Lake Village President, has retired after 25 years of service, and whereas Father Larry Dryfin has been one of the driving forces in the tremendous growth and increase in services offered to the Mays Lake residents in the areas of life enrichment activities, social services, and wellness. And whereas Father Larry Dryfin has led Mays Lake Village and renovations during his tenure, completing over $35 million in remodeling, which included tearing down 2 original apartment buildings constructed in the 1960s and replacing them with larger, more modern facilities. And whereas Father Larry Dryfin has been an active leader in the spiritual lives of Mays Lake Village residents and will continue to be so, assisting and giving seniors residing there back a sense of status, security, and serenity. Now, therefore, I, Ronald J. Gunther, Westmont Mayor, on behalf of the Village Board and Westmont residents, express our appreciation to Father Larry Dryfin for all that he has done to help guide and improve Mays Lake Village, and wish him well in his retirement. And I believe we have a signed copy, and we were going to have Mrs. Janet Zipchek here
Is anybody here for Father
to receive it.
If not, we'll make sure that this is presented to him.
Okay. The next one?
Yes, the next plaque.
The second proclamation is titled CASA of DuPage County's 20th anniversary.
She's here.
Whereas all Americans share a personal responsibility for the safety, security, and well-being of children in our families, neighborhoods, and communities, and whereas court-appointed special advocates, CASA of DuPage County, recruits, trains, and supports volunteer citizens to advocate for the best interests of abused, neglected, and dependent children in DuPage County's juvenile court system, and whereas CASA of DuPage County volunteers work tirelessly to ensure that every child is placed in a safe, permanent, and nurturing home, and whereas CASA is the only organization in DuPage County providing court-ordered advocacy to 100% of the youth at no cost to taxpayers or the families involved, and whereas CASA of DuPage County is funded solely through grants, contributions, and special events, and whereas CASA of DuPage County is recognized for training more than 800 volunteer advocates over 20 years of dedicated service and serving as the voice of more than 1,450 children who have found themselves, through no fault of their own, in the juvenile court system of DuPage County. And whereas locally, we support the services offered by CASA of DuPage County through Village of Westmont community volunteers, CASAs, who makes a difference in the lives of the children they serve, many of whom who reside in our community. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Ronald J. Gunther, Mayor of the Village of Westmont, do hereby extend congratulations to CASA DuPage County for 20 years of service to the 18th Judicial Circuit Court, and encourage citizens to recognize and reach out to those who may be affected by child abuse in order to help ensure that all DuPage County children may live free of abuse, abandonment, and neglect. And I believe we do have a representative here to receive that.
Thank you, Village of Westmont. We appreciate your support.
All right, unfinished business. A, Central Business District Tax Increment Financing District.
Motion to approve. Second. Nero.
On the question. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Abstain.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
B, places for eating tax. Board to consider an ordinance adopting a 1.5% places for eating tax. We've, last Thursday night, we addressed this, and I made it a point to allow tonight to have additional public comment by those individuals who could not attend Thursday night due to either business concerns or other commitments. So at this point, before we allow them to talk, I'm going to ask Spencer to please come to the podium and maybe give us a quick review and update of it. And also, if there's any questions that we had on Thursday that you can answer, then I'll call up anybody who'd like to comment on this tonight.
Thank you. I'll just briefly go over the tax. I know this is something we've talked about in depth previously and then again at our Thursday meeting, but I'll go through it just briefly. As the board will recall, during the budget process, we're dealing with the loss of the home rule revenues and looking carefully at what cuts we could make, but what services we wanted to preserve. And at the time, one of the things that was done to enable us to preserve some of our services and to offset some of the losses from home rule was the plan to adopt a places for eating tax. And at the time of the budget, the amount that was listed was a 1% tax, which was estimated to bring us in about $500,000. And then, as was also discussed, since that time, the board had met at an Administration Finance Committee meeting, so Administration Finance Committee of the Village Board met, and discussed different options as to how we could address some bond issues, how we could get some of our infrastructure improvements done, and we looked at a $10 million bond, and in order to do that, we had to do several things. One of those was adjust the places for eating tax instead of 1% to do a 1.5% tax, which would bring in an additional $250,000, which would be able to go towards the bonds. Now, at the last meeting, there was an additional question raised about the amount of the tax, and as we had discussed, when we looked at other communities around, the average of all the communities in DuPage County that have either a municipal sales tax or a places for eating tax, so the total impact on the patrons of restaurants would be about 1.3%. So the question was asked, what could we do if we did a tax of 1.3%? So my recommendation would be to do a 1.25%. Typically, these taxes are done in increments of 0.25%. So if we did a 1.25% as opposed to a 1.5% or 1%, that would give us enough to handle a little bit smaller of a bond issue. At that same Administration Finance Committee, we discussed how the street improvements that would need to be done would total approximately $8.5 million, and then we were hoping to be able to have a little bit additional money to cover some other things that we may want to do, some stormwater improvements or potentially some work on alleys or something like that. If we do a 1.25% tax for places for eating, we should be able to have enough with the other things we're also looking at doing to cover the $8.5 million that would be specifically for street improvements. So if the board is interested in doing a bond that would cover predominantly the street improvements but not give very much room for anything beyond that, we could look at a 1.25% tax for places for eating, and we could, cover that. We could also, if we do an $8.5 million bond, we could adjust it and not do some of the street repairs and address it to that aspect. But that would be an option if the board's interested in that. One thing that I think may have been a little bit confusing in the documents that were prepared for the board and the frequently asked questions that was posted online was the question about who is this tax on? And I'd indicated accurately, but perhaps not the best way to explain it. I'd indicated that the tax is officially on the owners of the business, but they could pass it on to the customers if they choose to. And upon further reflection, I've realized that might be a little bit misleading, that perhaps a better way to have explained it would have been to say that it functions just exactly the same as the state sales tax. Technically, the state sales tax, if you look at the legislation, it's technically a tax on the owners of the businesses. However, as we know, the vast majority of businesses have a separate item on the receipt that say tax, and then they have the amount of the tax. And that's the very same way that the places for eating tax would work, is that it's technically on the owners, but they're able to pass that through. And in talking with the other municipalities and in going to some of the places for eating in other municipalities, taking a look at the receipts, that's exactly what they did. So as we've talked about, specifically, for example, Clarendon Hills has a 1% place for eating tax. The base tax that we have for sales tax in the area is 7.25%. On their receipt, they show tax of 8.25%. And that, in talking with other municipalities, that's typically the way that their restaurant community does it. They simply put the full amount of the places for eating tax along with the state sales tax and list it as one tax amount on the receipt. So while my initial explanation was accurate, I think it may not have been understood quite as well as, comparing it more to the state sales tax. So that's the way that it would work. It would simply be an adjustment to the amount that goes on the receipt for the state sales tax. And as I just mentioned, the average amount that places have is 1.3% for those that have the tax. And then there were a couple of questions that had come up at previous meetings. I addressed them the last time, and I'm going to just revisit them briefly. There's a couple of different specific applications, and basically it all comes down to the question of whether or not the place is really a place for eating. So if there's seating for people to eat there, the tax would apply to the food or drink they sell that can be consumed on the premises for immediate consumption. Doesn't matter whether or not it actually is consumed on the premises, just whether or not it can be. So, for example, going through a drive-through at McDonald's, because McDonald's has seating and McDonald's is a place for eating, if I go through the drive-through at McDonald's, then that is still subject to the tax. If I go purchase carry-out or take-out, if it's a place that has seating, then that take-out or carry-out would be subject to the tax. The same goes for catering. So if there's a place that's doing catering, has seating, and is a place for eating, the items for catering, the food and the drink would be subject to the tax. If it's not a place for eating, it's a standalone catering shop that doesn't have a place for eating, then it would not be subject to the tax based on state statute. And I think that sort of sums up briefly the discussion.
Contracts that are outstanding?
Yes, thank you. Another item that had come up at some previous discussions was mentioned last time, but it's a good idea to mention it again, is some of the entities have indicated they have some contracts that are already outstanding or some quotes that have been given for the future that were given before this discussion came up, certainly before the ordinance has been passed, since it hasn't been passed yet. And the question was raised, what happens to those contracts? And the attorney has written it into the draft ordinance that they'd be able to have those specific items grandfathered in. They'd need to provide documentation, bring the documentation of those quotes or those contracts into the village, and then within 30 days. Is that correct, John?
Correct.
So within 30 days of the date that the ordinance would be passed, they could bring the information in, and then those would be grandfathered in, and they would not have to pay the places for eating tax on those contracts which were entered into before the ordinance passed.
And those are for orders that get filled, assuming the implementation date is September 1st to 2013, which is what's stated in the ordinance, to give time to notify businesses. The contract would have to, the sale of the food would take place after September 1st.
Any questions right now, Spencer?
I do have one question about reducing from 10 million to 8.5 and looking at just the road improvements and corrections and things. The other 1.5, wasn't that sort of earmarked for stormwater corrections?
Yeah, I think that was the hope of the board, that we'd be able to take some of it and do some stormwater improvements or some other infrastructure improvements the board was interested in doing. I think stormwater was kind of at the top of the list.
So that beast has not gone away, we just would...
Right. We would, if we decided to do the 1.25%, we would, I mean, my guess is what we'd probably do is say for the storm sewer, we would wait until we have another mechanism for funding. Kind of see what sort of recommendations and ideas come from the committee that's being formed, and then, potentially see if there's room for something on a referendum in 2014 or something like that.
Okay.
Again, this money is going to be pledged to pay off the bonds, but it's only a portion of that. There's other funds that are going to be, it's just, this is what was necessary to put it to the amount we need pledged every year annually in order to get $8 million issue.
That's correct.
Thank you. Now what I'd like to do, anybody who were not present or did not have an opportunity to speak on Thursday night, if you'd like to come to the podium, please state your name and address, and then you have an opportunity to address this issue. Yeah, you could be first.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Valerio. I own DJ Sports Bar and Grill. I have a question just occurred to me. I don't know if you can answer. It's kind of hypothetical. But as a village manager, if you guys didn't lose home rule, do you think that you'd be looking at this tax? I know it's hypothetical because it didn't happen, but...
It's hard to say. We would probably be looking at something for the infrastructure piece of it.
I mean, because it's only really going to get you $250,000, and you lost much more than that
But
with
I mean,
home
what
rule.
generated the conversation was the loss of home rule and the loss of
Okay.
revenue sources. That's
Because I think the fair thing would be, and I'm a resident, and I'm sure I'm going to get threats for people watching this at home, but I think that everyone who we collectively did not vote for home rule. Whether I voted or not, collectively, we didn't vote enough. We didn't get home rule. So I think a fair thing to do is to have everybody share in the cost of it. There's a lot of people that live in this town that don't go to my business, so they're not going to be paying through this. And every time I come up here, I try to think of how you guys are trying to work with everybody, and I don't envy you guys because you'll never make everybody happy. And I know that in a business, you'll never make everybody happy. But no one's going to say, great, you're raising my taxes. Why don't you make it 10%? What's 1.5? 1.5 doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. Everything just adds up and adds up. Our costs keep going up, especially in the food and alcohol industry. Every year, nothing ever goes down. Everything goes up. Fuel charges, whether gas prices are high or low, we get fuel charges now on everything. And we have to fit all that into our cost for everything. You guys are trying not to borrow money. I understand that. But the last 5 years, I've taken out a line of credit that I've literally used just to pay bills. So, sometimes in business, you have to borrow money. It's not ideal, but so not only would I be having to pay this tax, but I'm still trying to pay off a line of credit, which again, that's my business dealings, but I'm just giving you guys an idea that it seems unfair that you're not going to borrow money, but I'm borrowing money, and I'm borrowing money also to pay you guys, to make the payment every month. So I know that some people, we had not Thursday, but before Thursday, a few of the businesses met with the chamber. A few people had said, well, we already have the 0.5%, I guess we're used to that, so maybe we could live with the 0.5. I don't agree with that. I think that once you start that precedence, you guys are never going to come and say, well, now we have home rule, let's not have that tax anymore. I would rather see us not having a places for eating tax and doing vehicle stickers or property tax. I don't think it would be a big percentage of property tax increased because there's so many residents and 24 plus residents. I don't know how that would work, but I think that it would be more fair for it to work like that. And then I know that Mark already spoke, but on his behalf, I think that when he's out of state and he's getting taxed on things that he's selling out of state, he's already paying for that area to be in those fests, and to me that doesn't make sense that he would come back to Westmont and pay tax on something. And I'm sorry if I'm speaking out of turn, but at least I can put it to my customers. He can't go there and say, well, where I live it's 10% tax, and where he's selling things at 6%. So that's it. I hope you guys reconsider this, and possibly we had talked about this, the restaurants and bars in town next year when home rule comes up. If you guys put it back on the agenda, we will, and I know you guys probably can't say yay or nay to this, but we will actively promote people voting for home rule, and we will take it upon ourselves to get people educated on why it's important and how it does affect them. And it's, I just think people weren't very educated this last time. Even though you guys tried to do some meetings, you couldn't say really what needed to be said. A few of us tried to say what needed to be said, but anyway, that's all. Anyone have questions for me? Or
I think what we wanted to do is see if we can get everybody to discuss it, if anybody else is out there that'd like to come up.
Okay.
And then if we want questions, I think we'll go around and ask the board then to call you back up.
Thanks, Tracy.
I think that'd be the best. Let everybody have their opportunity to talk.
Laura Fleming. I own La Lali Patisserie at 20 North Cass. I understand the 8 million, 10 million. Is there a limit as how many years that this will be? If you say you have to do 10 million and you're collecting $500,000 a year, is this something that will stop after a few years?
I think the bond issue, if you're asking a question, bond issue is 20-year. How many years is a 20-year bond issue?
It's a 20-year.
In order to borrow $8 million and pay back, it's 20-year payback.
I understand. I have no problem with the 0.5% because it's going to be rolled back. The problem that I encounter quite often is I do wedding cakes and specialty cakes, and they're mostly out of town. They're not in Westmont. And when you have competition and it's a wedding cake, $70 or $50 can really make a difference whether or not you get it or not. And therefore, I can understand the 0.5%, and I can understand if you waited till January and did the other 0.5%, which is originally what was in the budget that you guys proposed or whoever proposed last year. But to go to 1.5 is a lot for somebody who's a very small business, and I do a lot of catering out of the town, and I have contracts through next year already, and I don't have a problem showing that I have the contracts. It's just that that's a lot of money when you're trying to stay competitive with all the other towns that are in the area. A lot of them, for instance, Hinsdale's only 1%. Tony and Marie's Bakery is one of them. So I'm up against them quite often. I'm also up against, there's a bakery in Elmhurst that just popped up. So maybe $70 isn't a lot, but $70 on a bride when she's already spent quite a bit on her wedding is a lot. And so therefore, I would hope that you would consider the 1% instead of the 1.5%.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Lee Fleming, 340 South Washington. I have a part interest in the business at 20 North Cass, so that's one of the reasons why I'm here this evening. Now, the biggest question that I have is, I understand the purpose of the bonds, I understand all that, I really do, but is, by doing this tax, going to mean that the residents of this town are not going to have any increase in their property tax in order to pay these bonds back? See, because I guess my question is, the way I've always understood it, I'm having a hard time in my mind understanding how just this percentage is going to go to pay back $8.5 or $10 million worth of bonds. And my question is, as the residents here, are we going to end up having to pay portions of these bonds back? That's my question.
I know, Spencer, if you want to just address that, because I think he has a simple answer for that one.
Sure. The places for eating tax is just one of the pieces that would be needed to cover the repayment of these bonds. There's several different pieces that would go into it. The first one of them would be we'd be taking a portion of our motor fuel tax, which we receive every year from the state, and we'd be pledging a portion of that. Part of it's already committed for state projects, but then the remainder of that we would be pledging towards paying off the bond. So that would be the first portion of it. Second portion of it is we'd be pledging a portion of our utility taxes, which currently goes into the capital projects fund. And currently that is used to pay off, we would take the portion that's being used to pay off some debt that we have. We would pay off the debt right now and then take the amounts that we're paying each year and pledge that amount towards the bonds as well. And so once we took those items into consideration, there was the question of where we would find the additional money. And the item that we had looked at to be able to find that additional money was the places for eating tax. So it's just one piece of the things that we would need to do. By itself, it wouldn't generate enough to be able to pay off either the 8.5 or the $10 million. But along with the other items, we can use that additional money to cover the payments of those bonds.
But the question is, without a referendum, can we raise property taxes beyond what it is right now?
Not beyond what's the tax cap law. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Let me up here.
If you could say what's your name and what product you
Rick Martin,
cook.
West Suburban Insurance, and I just am
Selling
a member.
cookies now?
I am a member of the Downtown Westmont Business Alliance. Being downtown with these businesses that are running, I think it's number one essential that we keep them there on that. And if we have to do that by raising the tax to a 1% as a 1.5, that's what we need to do. Looking ahead, we have the home rule that we're going to work hard at in getting that in place, which hopefully will raise that extra money that we'll be able to use for the downtown. So I think in combination with, if we raise that tax and only slightly on the eatery end, we should be able to bring that together for those businesses that are here. That's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Bob Ennigerberg from La Petite Suite, and we're at 15 South Cass, and I had to get that straight because we just moved. And I almost need to get the commercial in because Laura didn't mention us as who she's in competition against, and we do a lot of wedding cakes too, an awful lot of wedding cakes. And again, as Laura said, and I agree with it, they're mainly out of town. People aren't getting married here in Westmont. They're getting married in every other town out there, Chicago, Oak Brook, everywhere. So we'd have to be doing the same thing, raising our prices to match for, going against competition against businesses that are not in Westmont. So that is an issue for us. But on top of that, we're in the process of trying to launch a gluten-free cookie line. And those we're trying to sell wholesale through different stores, Whole Foods, Standard Market, Caputo's, all the way up to Jewel. And at this point, if we have to take all that, tax all of those based on a higher percentage, we're going to have to open Leah P. Gluten-Free as another company outside of Westmont, because we wouldn't be able to afford the hit of a tax like that on something that we're going to be doing wholesale and taking it through as a retail business doing it. It would have to become a separate entity. Thank you.
Should I just clarify? Diane Ennigenberg, also owner of La Petite Suite, 15 South Cass. I'm also a Westmont resident. As Bob stated on the gluten-free line, if I think I would really be tempted to open Leah P. as its own business outside of Westmont, because right now, as it stands, I have, 10 seats? If I was to run a wholesale that was produced off-site, but it ran out of my store, I would be subject to a tax that if I had a little store that had no seats, I wouldn't be subject to the tax. So it would be something that would have to happen. I think my big concern is if you've got businesses in an economy that is difficult at best over the last 4 or 5 years, and for businesses that have struggled, who have survived, we haven't necessarily, well, some of us have thrived, I don't know, but we have survived, and the economy is, at this point, taking those little baby steps back. Do we want to continue to go forward? How could we not pass it along to our customers? We would have to. I don't think anybody can eat 1.5% additional out of their pocket with, again, the cost to get food, fuel increases. I think I would be, I'm not opposed to paying my fair share of taxes. I think this is maybe something that maybe we could rethink at the beginning of next year. Not, something. I'm not sure which roads you're thinking of or whatever you're trying to fix with it, but I'd be curious if my street's already fixed, but I think this is something that I would push out. Let people continue to recover from a really bad few years. Let the public get back to feeling comfortable in buying stuff. And talk about it in January of 2017. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Fire alarms.
All right. Is there anybody else who'd like to address this issue? If not, I will close the public portion of it. Oh, you missed. Wait. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to reemphasize that I'm totally against this.
Wait a minute. You got to say who you are and your address first.
All right. My name is John Fleming, 18 North Cass. I'm not a resident, although I'm a business owner.
You should also say what you own.
I own J. Fleming's.
Okay.
Absolutely
Also
delicious.
put a plug in
Sorry.
where you're up.
I think it's going to discourage some people from doing business in this town. At a 1.5%, 1.25%, those are both clearly above the other towns. Although he said it was somewhere in the middle at 1.3. If you look at the other towns that are in the area, I mean, you've got Oak Brook Terrace, 0. Downers Grove, 0. Clarendon Hills is at a 1. Hinsdale's at a 1. Naperville's at a 1. The town doesn't exactly look like Naperville or these other towns. I get that. But, it's not going to make, I don't think it's going to encourage people to come here. I don't think it's going to encourage businesses to open up here. We've already paid, like I said before, we pay a lot more for garbage pickup. We pay a lot more for liquor licenses. The safety stuff that's going on with the fire safety, that's, it was passed on as it's only going to cost you this much, and that's not true. I mean, we're all paying more than what we were told it was going to cost. I've got to have 2 modules added to my system that was approved 5 years ago, and I believe that those rules were on the books before 5 years ago, but yet I'm still paying more now, and I don't think it's really fair, and I don't think it's going to help bring business to this town. It's not going to help sell moving your business here. So, and I think that's what we should be really focused on, is trying to get people to come here and open businesses, I mean, take a look around. I invested in this community because I thought, it'd be a great place. I mean, for the last 20 years, I can't understand why this town doesn't take off and look like a Hinsdale or a Clarendon Hills or a Downers Grove, Oak Brook. I mean, all these towns are, I think, doing a little better than we are, and that's why I came here. So,
Thank you. All right, now I will close. I'm going to close it now because we're not going to go back and forth pretty soon. I'm going to get to the trustees talking in a minute.
It's very simple. A couple of the questions have come up, and some people may think this is humorous, but maybe some don't. And I think that Diane and Bob from La Petite spoke very eloquently about this also. What if we took the seating arrangements out of our locations? Would we then not fall under this umbrella? I mean, it would not be a place to eat in anymore. Mm-hmm. And the other question I also have is the taverns that we have in town. Now, when they consume food on their properties, is that considered they are going to be taxed as well?
Correct.
Even especially when they're cooking out back, and they're not supposed to be cooking out back their locations. The other thing as far as that goes is the TIF, which was passed, which I think is fantastic, and everybody knows that. I know that it's going to take a while to generate funds in that particular scenario. But the question I ask is, if you have restaurants coming in and say they want to locate in this TIF district down here, and I think what John was trying to say was that they're going to come in and they're going to look at this and they're going to go another 1.5% as an eating tax. Now, personally, as a business individual, I guess my way to look at that is I would then look at the village and go, okay, yeah, I'm willing to relocate, but what is the village going to be able to do as far as some kind of incentives for me to come in here? And I understand the TIF and how that works, but I mean, I'm just kind of tossing that out there as something as far as potential new businesses coming into town, especially in those particular districts, the one south and the one in central. I mean, personally, myself, I understand the reasoning for what the board is attempting to do right now. I know what shape these streets are in. I know what the water problems are in this town. I've lived with it a long time, and I appreciate that. But I think one of the biggest things is we are known for our restaurants in this town, and it's the largest portion of what we have going in this town. And I would just hate to see us lose some of them because of this. I mean, a lot of them mom and pop stores, as it is right now, I can tell you right now, we take nothing out of that business whatsoever. I mean, it's tough, especially in the industry that La Petite's in, that we're in, that the other bakeries are in. The competition is fierce. And I just, I know what we proposed in the budget. I know that that was a proposal. It wasn't definite, and you could do however you like with it, change it, modify it, lessen it, make it more. But I think when we were talking about that point in time, I think the 1% is kind of what we thought was a reasonable number. And I mean, I still kind of think that way, but that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, watch this. All right, I close the public portion of it, and what I'd like to, if there's a board member that has a specific question for one of the people in the audience, you can call them back and ask that. And normally, I think the normal route, procedure would be to ask for a motion, but I think maybe tonight it'd be appropriate to discuss it. Unless the board would like to, if somebody would like to make a motion, I just thought it might be better if the open discussion. Unless there's a motion, I'll entertain that too, so.
I have a question for the attorney, or maybe Spencer. If, for the example of Mark Link, where he travels out of state, when he's selling out of state, does he pay Illinois sales tax, or does he pay that state, or does he pay both?
The rule's going to mirror the state sales tax rule, and I don't know what that rule is. Spencer, I don't know if you do.
Maybe Mark knows. When you're out of state, do you pay Illinois tax plus their tax?
Be listed, the corporation has to be listed in that state. I have to have a number, ID number.
So if you're in Iowa, you pay Iowa's tax and you pay the Illinois tax?
So you're getting charged sales tax twice? Or are you only paying the sales tax that's in that state you're at, since the sale was made there, but you're not paying a sales tax for that amount here in Illinois?
Through the POS system here. So there's no POS system out. We're doing festivals, so I have to give them the tax amount there. I tell my total sales and I have to pay percent tax there, but I still have to ring my POS system here at the end of the weekend. So.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be paying that sales tax here in Illinois. And I would honestly think about looking at another POS system that gives you the opportunity, so, because you're getting double, your customers are getting double taxed. Once, I mean, it's kind of.
Well, it's just like, that's a preset price.
Excuse me, Mark, you might as well, so we can hear you, but I don't think anybody else can.
At home.
At home.
Yeah, so we get the.
Hello, Board. Mark
You
Link
are?
from Uncle Bub's.
There you go.
Thank you. So we do ring it through. I have to put everything through my POS system, yes.
So you're not charging separate sales tax. You're just saying, here's a sandwich and it's $3.
Right.
And it's built into it.
Correct. Correct.
Then how do you pay the sales tax out there then?
Pardon me?
How do you pay the sales tax out there?
What do you mean?
Let's say you're in Iowa.
I have to fill out a form.
Then you have to break that out of it.
Yep.
And send it and give them that amount.
I sure do. Yep.
See, I don't understand why you'd be paying the second sales tax here too.
Well, it's just because I'm ringing it through my POS system. Again,
Doesn't make sense.
I have to pay a percentage to them. So it all depends. I think it was 1.9% in Arizona when we were out there. I still take the profit and ring it through the register. So I can't just go to the bank and say, here, they're going to say where to come from. So I have to show the sales in my POS system.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions for me? Or?
Not for you.
As you all know, I am against it, especially because of the catering. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, sir.
Mr. Addington.
Three things, and again, we can ask some of the folks in the audience to respond to this. But when you and I went to the downtown meeting last week, and this is one of the things that I tried to talk a little bit about on Thursday, and I was hoping some of them would mention it tonight. First one is that in some cases, and Tracy will pick on you as the first one, Tracy uses a fixed price menu. She doesn't charge tax. So if I go in there and have one of her sandwiches and it's $7, that's what I pay. She then deducts from that $7 the tax. So in this case, with whatever tax we would put on for this eatery tax, right now, the one's considered as the 1.5%, she now has to take another 1.5% off of that fixed price unless she wants to rechange all of her menus and raise her fixed prices. And that was something that I think none of us had really considered. The other one was what Mark just said, and I'm kind of agreeing a little bit with Bob Scott, because I seem to recall, and again, I could be completely wrong on this, but I seem to recall that if I went and bought a car in another state, I could either pay the taxes there or here. Not both places. You didn't pay taxes both places. But again, that's 15-year-old thing, so maybe our wonderful folks in Springfield have changed some of the rules since then. But yeah, I definitely think we need to look at that. The other was the cost. That's what I was saying Thursday a little bit, is what I heard at the meeting of the downtown organization was that every one of these people is going to have to pay additional accounting fees in order to set up the accounting of this additional tax. Their bookkeeper is going to charge them something. Whatever that something would be, that's between them and the person who does their work. But there is an additional cost to every one of these businesses out here. Collect that tax and make the reports to us, whether it's on a monthly or quarterly or whatever basis they do it at. They have an expense in addition to the 1.5%, if that's where it ends up. But I just wanted to be sure, and if any of you want to comment on that.
Yeah, Trustee Ash, yes, you can come up.
Okay.
I'm just hoping we can get to the trustee discussion at some
John
point.
Fleming, absolutely delicious, 18 North Cass. In addition to that, there's also the cost of having the computers reprogrammed, having a separate, tax added into it. And then any menus that we have online or in print that state the sales tax, those have to be printed.
Those have to be.
So those are some additional costs.
So that was my point. It's not just that there's an additional tax that they pay. They're going to have some additional costs just to do it. So just be aware of that and as we go forward and how we do it. So that was the only reason. Because that was very pointed out to us very strongly when we met with them the last week.
And I do think that Spencer pointed out that we would bill quarterly if that helped. And I don't know if Trustee Scott has any idea. I don't have any idea what costs we're talking about as far as that extra reporting. I don't know if you would, being a small business owner or a large business owner.
I was doing all my own sales tax and paying for our accountant to everything else. And then he said, why don't I just take it over because you're already paying for it anyhow. So for me, it didn't pan out to cost me anything because it was already set up in the fixed cost of having accounting. But what I'd like to know is our tax taxable on wholesale? Because the whole object of wholesale is that then the end user pays the tax.
Yeah.
So if is this eatery tax like the sales tax that the state does? Because if we sell something wholesale, we're not charging those people sales tax.
Well, wholesale selling in bulk off-site.
That's what Diane and Bob are talking about, that they're talking about doing this wholesale where they'll be selling to, let's say, Standard Market. Standard Market's going to be doing the sales tax at that point. They shouldn't get nailed with it at that point.
I would agree for that because that's not a product manufactured to be consumed on the premises.
Right.
Also would point out that this is a very minor reprieve for the businesses, but there is whatever tax they pay, they get to keep 1% of that tax themselves to help cover the costs of preparing the returns and remitting the tax, et cetera. It may not cover their costs, but it's built into the ordinance that way.
I might as well say what I have to say. Where I'm coming from, it's a tough decision. I believe something has to be done. I'm looking at this as a total increase of 1% new tax is really what we're talking about. My position is not anything to do with against the restaurants in this community. It's for roads and road repair. I support the 1.5 cent eatery tax based on the following points. I am supportive of increasing revenue by using the best identified option, which Spencer gave us in background at some meetings, available to non-home rule communities. Due to the fact that the proposed tax can be passed on to the consumer, due to the fact that the Westmont is underfunded in its current budget and for capital improvements, and due to the fact that the road repair costs are escalating at an increased rate. I am not voting against the restaurants. I am voting for increased funding for road repair, and I would urge all the trustees to support the 1.5% tax. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I think
Trustee
we're gonna start
Barry, you're
doing
smiling.
that.
now.
Of course I have comments.
Well, come on.
Point of order at this point, if we're going to start, we probably should put it on the table.
That's, and once anybody feels like they'd like to make a motion, I would entertain that.
Motion to approve Seneca.
Second, Nero.
There's a motion
Now
to
it's-
approve.
Now you,
And on the question, Trustee Barry.
Just if it now that changes the perspective, but as we've tried to do since taking office is try to compromise, and myself personally as a downtown businessman, I've tried to look to help the businesses as much as possible and be the voice if possible. I thought compromise would have been the best. I know we discussed three-quarter, we discussed different options. I was really happy to hear Spencer say that with 1.25%, we could still keep that bonding. After Mr. Fleming spoke, I was reminded of the alley that surrounds my business and the constant flooding that I deal with and the deteriorating roads that I see. And I kind of have changed my mind here today to more so support the 1.5 because of all these things that we want to be a downtown like Naperville, we want to be a downtown like Hinsdale and so forth. If we don't have the funds to do that, I think we just stay in the stalemate. And I've been complaining about my alley for 20-some years, so I know the fears and the problems that we have here. That's what I have today.
I would like to make a motion, it probably will fail, but I would like to amend the motion to lower the tax to 0.75%, 0.75%. I think that when we went into this thing, both when I sat and listened to the budget process before we took office and after listening to a lot of our restaurants here, I think everyone's going to have to buy into where we're trying to go in what we're doing, and I think it's going to have to be a lot of small steps. The restaurants are gaining back 0.5% of the sales tax come July 1st when the home rule tax that they are now collecting goes away. What I'm saying to the restaurants is we would put in a 0.75% eatery tax. That means that they would be paying an extra 0.25% over what they are doing today. And that would be their contribution in. And I think that we have 4 or 5 or 6 other avenues that we can look at. Some of them were mentioned tonight without referendum. Vehicle stickers and some other things that can be done. In other words, everybody buys in if we do it this way. Instead of just saying to the restaurants in town, hey, we're going to do 1.5% and you're paying for it. Or you're going to have to collect it from your businesses. And I think that's wrong. So I would make a motion to modify to 0.75. I would exclude all the existing contracts that these folks have. I'll leave that up to the attorneys. I don't need to have Laura run in here with proof I've known Laura for all these years. If Laura says she's got an existing contract and it's not subject to the tax, that's fine. But I'll leave that up to the legal eagles. I think out-of-state sales, again, it should be whichever one is higher is the one you pay. I don't think a person should pay both. I think fest should be excluded from this. And there's one other point, and we want this TIF to work. And I think this is completely against something positive for the TIF. So I'm putting that motion on the floor. If it dies for lack of a second, then it dies.
Well, you're confusing me, so.
Good.
No. My point is, if we do this right, once you say you're making a motion, we should have waited for a second, then had the discussion, because you
Okay.
just kept going on. But the motion
Well, I
is
threw in
what?
some-
What's the motion, Jim?
The motion is to take it from 1.5% down to 0.75, and to have a couple of exclusions in.
Okay, that's the motion. Motion's on table. Do I hear a second? Seeing none, that motion fails. We still have a motion on the table, and the motion was to, as presented, the 1.5. On the question.
I guess I'm going to ask Steve May, if you can just give us a ballpark figure when we continue to put off road construction, reconstruction, how much does it go up for the repairs the deeper we have to go?
I should have brought that.
It's a very hard topic to put simply in that form, but I guess I'll describe the difference between resurfacing and reconstruction. And when you resurfacing of a road is what we were talking about, the $8.5 million is simple street resurfacing, and that's grinding off the actual top 4 inches of approximately 4 inches of the asphalt and putting down a new surface. It's a maintenance operation designed not only just for the obvious ride qualities and all the good things that you see at the surface, but it helps preserve the life of the pavement. When the pavement is at the end of its life, whether it's base failure or too much water in the base or for whatever reasons, then you're reconstructing, and that's when you dig everything up, throw it all away, go right down to the clay base and start over with your aggregate and your different layers of pavement. That difference is at least a factor of 10 more expensive. So if you let the road fall apart to the point where it is now required to be reconstructed, it is definitely more expensive. But I mean, I had a nice chart where it's actually an exponential function. So waiting 1 year is dangerous. Waiting 2 years is not twice as dangerous. It's more than that.
That just takes into account the condition and the deterioration. It doesn't include the cost of materials, and as we see,
it all has to be factored in.
Oil-based materials, I don't think they're going to be going down.
And the cost
driven by fuel prices, oil, so it's all related.
And at that point, it's going to be put on the shoulders of the residents, all of them, because there's no way we'll get enough sales tax to cover that. And if we're at 5 times, 4 times, 7 times, it's got to come from somewhere, or they're going to keep getting worse. And then you won't have to worry about a TIF district, and you won't have to worry about the restaurants, because nobody's going to be able to get here.
And gravel roads.
And it's not going to be good. So is this something that we really want to put on at restaurants? Absolutely not. And I think contrary to popular belief, good government doesn't want to tax anybody. But if you have to do it, then you want to make sure you do it to the people who don't live in your town. That was the reason for the gas tax. So the people who bought the cars and the people who drive through Westmont should sit there and pay us the tax so the residents didn't have to. And we don't have a lot of avenues to go by. So with 94 restaurants, 93, 92, whatever it is, it just seemed the way where a lot of people who come into this town and eat in the restaurants from other towns, let them do it for us. Let them help it so the residents who are on just as tough times as everybody else don't have to be burdened. If we don't do this, and the people want roads fixed, and they want the downtown fixed up and everything else, it's going to be on their shoulders. And I'm not quite sure that they're going to be able to either afford it or really want it. Sometimes you have to pay for it if you want it enough. But then there's a point where you can't complain about it, because it's either you pay up and we get it fixed, or we're going to try to figure out another avenue. And with 40 miles out of 60 that need resurfacing right now, I think that tells you the gravity of the situation. We don't want it to get to 50. We don't want it to get to 60 where all the roads have to be done. Because by the time that happens, there are going to be some that need total restoration, and we're at 10 times. We're kind of caught between a rock and a hard spot here.
Yeah, we don't have time. I mean, to take small steps to a problem that's this big, we just do not have the time. We owe it to the entire village, to the entire residents, to really tackle the stormwater issue and these roads. I think that's top priority. And, you know, like Trustee Scott said, we had to pick the best avenue to do it. And I think it really is, and that's why I support it.
And it was it's a painful decision. It wasn't easy, but we have a responsibility to the residents to be fiscally responsible. And it took 1% to just balance the budget. Anything less of that, and we're in a deficit. We are just so limited with what we can do. And the restaurants, I mean, we don't want to ding the restaurants. We absolutely don't. And just as Trustee Scott said, this is, with the assumption that hopefully the restaurants would be able to pass this on, this tax. I pay tax on everything I buy. There's a line for tax. And the tax goes up and my tax goes up. So you would hope that it could be passed on to the consumer. And it's people from everywhere. It's not just Westmont residents. And it's not something we want to do. But you know what? If our streets continue to crumble and if our roads continue to flood, your housing values are going to go down. Nobody's going to want to move to this town. John pretty much said this town looks terrible. He pretty much bashed us. Thank you, John. It's only going to get worse in his eyes and in our eyes. And I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, but we have no alternative. We have no alternative. There's 94 restaurants. I've actually had some restaurant owners say to me, you have to do what you have to do. I support it.
Yeah. It's not.
So, I don't know.
This is kind of apropos tonight. It's raining out.
Yeah.
We're talking about flooding issues. We can't wait 2 years, 3 years, 4 years for this, because we all know there's going to be more flooding issues to come. It's just going to happen. And we've got to start addressing it. And I don't see how we can look at the public in their eyes and, everyone who's had these problems and sit there and say, sorry, we're not going to do it.
I know the people on Grant and Adams, I'm surprised they're not running in the door saying, please fix my street, please fix my street.
They're looking in their basements right now to make sure there's no water coming in.
I wanted to catch Steve while he was up there. The number on the resurfacing for 1 mile was $361,000. Sounds about right. Okay. And then again, I just wanted to say, it has nothing to do with taxing the restaurants. It has to do with resurfacing the roads.
And balancing
Can I
the
ask for
budget.
a couple clarifications? One is, when is the half cent going off for the home rule half cent? When is that going to be taken off the sales tax? And if this is passed, when does this get applied?
So the half cent comes off July 1st, and then according to the draft ordinance, we'd be looking at implementing this September 1st.
Correct.
Correct.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Begrudgingly, yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Adding.
No.
Motion passes.
Motion passed. Agenda item C. And again, thank you, everybody, for coming out and giving us your opinion. Community Stormwater Management Ad Hoc Committee. Manager Searle.
Board to consider an ordinance to create an ad hoc committee to review the findings of the professional studies and to make recommendations regarding community stormwater management and village infrastructure. And I believe a list of individuals that have volunteered for the public portion. If you look at the ordinance is actually designates different members for the committee that include staff members, a combination of staff members and elected officials, project manager, and then a resident from following areas. And I won't read all of those, but I'll read the names of the individuals that have so kindly volunteered to be involved in this, and I will apologize up front because some of these names I do not know, and I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce them correctly. But the first individual we have is Carolina Przowski.
That's why I got you reading it, not me.
Yeah. And then we have Mike Graham, we have Pete Kramer, we have Dave Wiesbrock, John Jagielo, Jim Burke, Bob Gleason, George Hamper, Jim Wright, Glenn Gabriel, John McClory, and Joseph Esposito. So those are 12 individuals, and I believe that is...
Good group.
Are you chairing that?
Yes.
I think we're missing one.
One or two more, I think, to complete the committee.
So the idea was to go ahead, pass the ordinance this evening, announce the members that we do have currently committed to it, and then we'll come back to the board with a final appointment to make the committee complete. I believe, and I hope I'm not completely wrong on this, but based on email I read earlier today, the committee is going to try to meet. The first meeting will be on June 24th, I believe.
Is that right, Steve?
24.
Yes.
Do we know time, date, place? I mean, not date, but...
But tentatively that evening, there'll be the first Stormwater Committee meeting. So
7 o'clock?
I think it's to be determined.
To be determined, so we'll let everybody know who's on that committee, and we'll also let the board know if they'd like to attend.
You want this as two motions, one to create the committee and one to approve the appointments, or can we do it all
I think there'd be
inclusively?
Wouldn't there be, John, a motion to approve the ordinance and then a motion just to appoint the members?
What we discussed Thursday is the ordinance as drafted gives the mayor the power to appoint. And I asked whether the board wants to have consent to those appointments. You all collectively said no.
Yeah.
So only one motion is required.
So just a motion to create the committee.
Yes, and I'll entertain that motion.
Nero.
Nero.
Second. Barker.
Motion's been made and seconded on the question. Anybody have a question? If not, a roll call, please.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Thank you. D, village right-of-way dedication. The board to consider an ordinance adopting an honorary designation of an existing village street. Manager Searle.
Board to consider an ordinance adopting honorary designation of the intersection of East Des Moines and Cass Avenue as honorary William Ron Way, I believe, is the name that was selected.
Again, we're looking at Cass and East Des Moines.
East Des Moines.
Des Moines, yes. We'll get that straight.
Motion to approve. Barker.
Second, Nero.
Motion to approve and second, and the question? Trustee Barry.
I guess in regard to earlier emails, I think, was this something we were going to table and discuss? I guess I was confused then.
I think we tabled it till after the retirement to make it a surprise, and pending it being approved, so.
So none of the pending litigation threat is in regard to this?
It's over with.
It's over?
It is not, doesn't affect anything.
Doesn't, yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
No.
Okay, that was fine.
So any other questions?
Nope.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Addington.
Present.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
New business, Class B tobacco license amended development permit. Manager Searle.
Board to consider an ordinance approving an amended development permit for Westmont Quick Stop. And the second point is board to consider an ordinance increasing the number of Class B tobacco licenses by one to accommodate a request by the petitioner of Westmont Quick Stop. And I know there was some question about limiting the size.
Let's get a motion in a second.
Sorry.
So move Seneca.
Second, Nero.
Seneca, motion, seconded by Nero. Motion has been made. On the question, the attorney has one.
Yeah, and this is just on point one, correct? And in discussions that Deputy Chief Gunther had with the property owner, who I think's in attendance tonight, the discussion was that it was difficult to come up with a percentage of sales and track that and be bound by that. And instead, they looked at the existing space. There are 2 shelves behind the cashier, and they agreed to limit tobacco product sales to those 2 existing shelves. So we wrote the ordinance that it would be restricted to those shelves or any replacement of those shelves as approved by the police department or the police chief. And that's the restriction. And in addition, restricting paraphernalia sales.
That was, yeah.
So that's also included.
Correct.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
I think it accomplished what we talked about on Thursday.
Absolutely.
Seeing no other questions, roll call, please.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
New business B, Westmont Police Department intergovernmental agreement.
Actually, I'm sorry to
I'm
interrupt.
sorry.
Point 2.
We got to do point 2. I'm sorry. I moved too quick. Board to consider an ordinance increasing the number of Class B tobacco license by 1 to accommodate a request by the petitioner of Westmont Quick Stop.
Motion approved, Scott.
Second, Addington.
On the question.
I just have a question. They're not sure what it's going to be called yet. He said that might change. So if they decide to call it the corner grocery, or they decide to call it something different than this, what does that do to the ordinance? Or is it not named in the ordinance?
They are named in the ordinance, at least now. I can change it. We prefer to list the business owner in the ordinance and not the name.
That's it. That solves it.
I would just need I can get that from the police chief.
Solves it.
And they can change their name
12
times a year if they want.
Perfect.
As long as the ownership remains the same.
We just want them in town.
Thank you. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Now I'll reread B, Westmont Police Department intergovernmental agreement, emergency communications.
Board to consider an ordinance accepting and authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and the Village of Westmont for a police radio backup radio network system. And as we heard Thursday, that will allow us to use a UHF radio frequency currently owned by the Village of Downers Grove, and we've been in discussions for a number of months with Downers Grove to come to this arrangement.
Motion to approve Barker.
Second, Nero.
On the question, seeing none, a roll call, please.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
New business C, Westmont Fire Department intergovernmental agreement radio system. Manager Searle.
Or to consider an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the villages of Clarendon Hills, Downers Grove, Westmont, Hinsdale, Willow Springs, the Tri-State Fire Protection District, and the DuPage Public Safety Communications, which is known as DUCOM, for the Southeast DuPage County Communications and Radio Networks. This is a revision to an existing intergovernmental agreement to add the DUCOM organization to the agreement.
Motion to approve, Nero.
Second, Barry.
On the question.
In addition to adding DUCOM, Oak Brook was removed, and there were a few other minor changes to the agreement, nothing substantial. Correct, Mr. Conley?
No, we put that mic over there that can be passed around. You see that mic? Thank you, sir. There it is. There you go. There. Camera maybe won't get you, but.
Generally speaking, that's that is correct. Well done.
Well done, yeah. Any other question? If not, roll call, please.
Trustee Nero.
Sorry, yes.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
D, revisions to the Village of Westmont Municipal Code, and the board to consider ordinance modifying Section 10-27 of the Village Code to amend initial liquor license fees. Manager Searle?
Actually, this addresses some earlier comments in which the comment was made that our liquor license fees were too expensive, and I think the actual reference was the initial fee. And the board discussed this Thursday night that we would like to bring those fees in line with our neighboring communities. And I believe I'm trying to remember if there was any specific questions that you had from Thursday. But that's
I don't
what
think so.
it's
I think
about.
everybody was in total kind of agreement with the recommendation. So,
Motion to approve, Barry?
Second Addington.
motion has been made on the question. Barker?
Yeah, I would like to find out if we were to approve this evening, can we go back at some point and look at the annual fee? And the revenue from the annual fee, does that go into the general fund?
Well, the answer, I believe, is it goes in the general fund, and you can always look at fees. There's no reason why you couldn't look at it. I think in the survey that we did a pretty extensive survey, we felt like our annual fees were pretty competitive. Didn't need to be adjusted, but you can always look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
E, DuPage County Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan. Board to consider a resolution to adopt the DuPage County Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan for 2012 as an official plan of the Village of Westmont. Manager Searle.
I would just point out that this is something we've been asked to consider by DuPage County. It's a rather lengthy document, and we didn't provide it in the packet, but there's a link available for any of the board members or the public that want to review it. It's available online. The purpose of the plan is to identify a series of actions and items to protect people and reduce damage from natural hazards such as floods, severe winter and summer storms, tornadoes, extreme heat, a lot of the kinds of things that we've been seeing in more recent years.
Motion to approve, Nero.
Second, Scott.
Motion's been made and seconded on the question. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Seneca.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Agenda item F, Westmont Street Fair, parking fee and liquor amendments. Board to consider the following ordinances to assist the Central Business District businesses during the Westmont Street Fair. Manager Searle.
Board to consider the following ordinances to assist Central Business District businesses during the street fair. Ordinance authorizing the village to charge for parking at the Cass Burlington parking lot during the Westmont Street Fair in exchange for vouchers usable at this CBD or Central Business District businesses, as well as an ordinance amending applicable sections of Chapter 10 alcoholic beverages of the Westmont Municipal Code that allows for open containers of alcohol in designated public areas during the street fair, subject to policy implemented by the local liquor commissioner. And just for clarification, because I know we use the terminology Thursday a lot about cruising nights and the market, the street fair is that term that they're using to
For both? Combined? Separate? Each one separate?
These are separate.
Motion to approve one, Seneca?
Second, Nero.
On the question, I may just a clarification. That will not begin this week with the police and municipal night, and they'll charge up to $10. They may just start with $5. And the whole idea is to assist our downtown businesses to get people to go and patronize their businesses during this event.
Well, I think we all saw that one email that came out, and I don't think that citizen got the fact that it's a trade-off.
Yes.
That, yeah, I'm paying for parking, but I can use that money if I want to go to the Knights or another business.
Any business in that closure, they can go, and I think they may start with $5. They don't, I mean, 10 may be too much. Trustee Scott.
Is everybody on board with that business-wise up and down the street?
I mean, we've talked to probably 80% of them. I don't know if
I mean, because I just don't want that thing coming out where they say, well, we went into so-and-so's and they refused it.
They wouldn't take it.
You're absolutely right.
It says, the ordinance says, and I didn't distribute it yet because I wanted to hear how the discussion went because this was still in flux a bit, but it says participating
Yeah.
Central Business District businesses, so a business could say, no, we're not going to honor this voucher.
We're
But
hoping
we have a majority of them that are in
Yes,
favor of it?
yes.
It'd be listed on the voucher.
Yes.
So then, in turn, it's been decided, I guess, to go with the voucher versus like
A receipt?
A receipt.
Yeah, we talked about that, and they felt it was best to collect it ahead of time, so you're not chasing them after. And then all they have to do is redeem it, and parking's for free. You can go get ice cream, you can go get a cookie, you can go to the Knights and get something to eat, or Visitory, anywhere.
Any furniture, anything like that?
Yes,
that you want?
yes. And he's selling it for $5 right now, too.
Gutters.
So
How many $5 pieces of furniture?
he's selling it for $5.
Aluminum siding.
$5 off, right? That would be
So he, any other question?
Yeah, just to confirm, it's WSEC, which is running this event, that's going to be charging patrons, and they're going to be printing up, I assume, the vouchers at their expense?
Yep.
So,
Are they going to be manning it too?
Yeah, yes, they will be manning it, or they'll have a group assist them in manning it.
so is this a way for WSEC to be making money?
Sounds like it's a money loser for them if they're printing it up.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Well-
It's a wash. They would have to pay back.
I don't understand the voucher system as well. Are they just pieces of paper that businesses have agreed to honor?
Basically, they're going to create some sort of a coupon that's worth $5 that evening at one of the participating businesses. So they redeem it. The business then at the end of the evening will turn it in, and they'll be reimbursed for that. How many they have? They have 10, they get $50.
And you know what? If I park
Businesses
and
get
pay and stick the voucher
They
in
get
my
100%.
pocket, yeah, then it becomes a
Yeah.
money maker for them.
The businesses
It's
go
not
to
redeemed.
WSEC then and say,
Yes.
someone redeemed this voucher, pay me $10 back.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Ideally, what's going to happen at the end of the night, the WSCC will walk through the
Now, how's that
businesses
taxed?
and, how's the tax? We'll worry about that later. And they'll redeem them and pay them right then and there.
Right.
The whole idea is they're not doing it to make profit. They're doing it as a convenience to the businesses to encourage people to keep the parking lot available for the customers of the downtown businesses. So,
As I stated Thursday, and I still have of that opinion that I think it works best is getting a refund because of that, but I understand that then we have manning issues as far as people leaving at different times and so forth. It's not a city parking lot, I understand that, but that does clear up some of that exchange and back and forth.
and we're going to try it. We're going to try it a week from Thursday, probably the first time, and we'll see how it goes.
The restricted parking from a time perspective, are we doing an hour before the commencement of the street fair? Are we doing it just on those exact hours?
I think they start setting up at 4 o'clock, so Tom?
Yeah, the Fresh
I
Market
would
opens
think-
at 4.
I would
so-
think from 4 till,
They close off Cass Avenue at 3 o'clock, street market. The fresh market starts at 4 o'clock, Mayor, you're correct.
So I would say start at 3.
Start at 3.
3 o'clock.
Makes sense.
Okay. Any other question? I'll have a roll call on number 1.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Nero?
Yes.
Trustee Barker?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Addington?
Yes.
On the second one,
Motion to approve, Addington.
Second, Nero.
on the question, I have a clarification that I believe we were going to start with restaurants only, and it was only going to apply to those that are actually sit-down serving food.
Serve food.
Yes, to begin with, so it's not going to apply to anybody who does not have serving food. So, just to start with, if it's popular and we don't have an issue with it, we can expand to anybody else in that area, so.
That makes sense.
Any other?
Yeah.
Public, based on what we saw in the email and service raised.
Okay. If there's any questions from the board?
Yes.
I have quite.
Yes.
In regard to the restaurants only, again, when we talk taxes, like I think of my friend Chip Plum at Charlie Plum's there. They were excited about this program. So are they going to be omitted even though they serve pizza in there, or because, you know, they were talking to do specialties and they were really starting to embrace it. So they are going to be omitted from it?
You know what, I'm open for the board's feedback on that. It could be everybody within that enclosed area. It can just be the restaurants in that closed area, so.
I've, just playing devil's advocate, I feel that we need to be consistent with how we're allowing outdoor dining and, you know, seats outside. So if we're not consistent with that and having to serve food, honestly, I have nothing against it, but, you know, I don't want to see them setting tables up in the street. And right now, it's only for restaurants serving food and alcohol. So I think we need to remain consistent. I mean, that's just the way I think. And maybe add it later, see how it's all working, but for this initial, because it's sort of almost trial.
I think that was the intent, was just to try it, like if someone had a dinner and they wanted to leave with a to-go drink, if it, you know,
Yeah.
they could put the bracelet on and walk out with it. I don't think the intent was to go in and out of the thing to get alcohol, but, and again, it could be a change, and I'm looking for opinion. I think that was the
I
intent.
think it seems very discriminatory against them, you know, especially as that, you know, they're trying to embrace this and they sell alcohol. And then to have an ordinance where we're going to allow alcohol to go out and we're going to say, our place that sells alcohol only, you're exempt from it. Is the KC Hall going to be exempt from this too? You know, I mean, it's so.
They serve food.
Well,
They serve
I mean,
food.
so does the Pop Alley.
So, you know, and the night serves food just for that night.
That's where we need to.
I mean, I could be persuaded, of course, but it's a liquor commissioner's decision at the end of the day. I do not want to see tables out in front of the Potbelly.
Yeah, I don't think they were talking tables. I think they were more embracing that.
Can walk out with a drink.
That hurricane drink idea that, you know,
Like a specialty or something.
I'm open for suggestions now, because I can, unless
I mean, they serve
Chief
tombstone
Mulhern,
pizzas.
do you have
I mean,
any comments?
It's not like they make pizza and sell them.
If we're going to omit the Potbelly, we should omit the KC, because really their food is one and the same. You know, I mean.
They bring it
No,
in.
it's not. And we are not a restaurant.
That's right.
If we're going to adhere that strictly.
It would have to be, if we do this, then the Knights and Potbelly could not participate in this.
And I would say, in my mind, I agree with Harold, and I guess maybe the thing to do would be, again, just like before, do we want to amend the motion to include those places?
And just one other, that you know, they pay for that liquor license just as extreme as the restaurants pay for that liquor license. So to have them, you know, not have it, again, it just seems discriminatory whether we embrace that business or not. But if we have a participating business that maybe wants to improve its image and maybe wants to be part of this, you know, improvement of this, I just don't see why we would discriminate against them.
Are they the only two with liquor licenses that would be excluded?
They would be the only two that would not technically, I think,
Fall into a
qualify
restaurant.
under. And the only thing and John reminded me, it's broad enough right now that it includes everybody unless we exclude. That's why I brought it up. Right now, if we pass it the way it is without putting any exclusion, everybody would be, because the way it's worded now, it's any business.
And I think the name of the game is liquor, for you as the liquor commissioner and/or your deputy, If there's a violation, you pull the plug on them.
Yeah, to
On
me,
that-
it's a trial
that one
basis.
business.
I'm
Right.
okay with trying it.
Right.
It's two places. They know it's a trial basis. They're going to be watching it like a hawk.
Yeah, they're not going to want to
Okay.
jeopardize their license.
How do you differentiate this between the taste? Where you can walk up and down the street with a beer in your hand.
We're going to make them wear.
But you can only buy it in one place at the Taste.
Right. But it's still, if
Oh,
you're worried
I-
about people with liquor walking up
Yes,
and down the street,
yes.
we
Yeah.
allow
Do
it
it
at the
then.
Taste
You're
in
right.
bigger quantities and a lot
Yeah.
more people than what we've got here.
You're right.
And I think the chief may tell us how many problems we've had with people at the Taste with issues. I'm sure there's been some, but I don't think this is going to
Not
be the same crowd
outrageous.
that we're going to have in a much
Not
smaller.
outrageous,
Right.
yeah.
Chief, do you see, you're standing there ready to say something.
Answer any questions or?
Comment.
Tom just likes to talk.
He just likes to be at the podium.
And originally, this request came from the restaurants. It was originally for restaurants, not for the Potbelly. I don't think the Uptown would be included because they're kind of out of the designated area. If there were to be problems, this could include having more officers present. If there's more alcohol, if we start to seeing a lot of alcohol or a lot of issues. The other issue would be is can we leave it for the deputy, for the liquor commissioner, the mayor, to, if he sees a problem, be able to restrict them. I don't know how we could do that, but is that a possibility? I mean, Trustee Eddington said that the mayor could just take it back. We're not issuing licenses, we're not issuing, unless the other mayor issues permission. We open this up as a trial period, and if there are any issues, the mayor would have the authority to restrict the business. The Knights of Columbus does sell food on those nights only, and they do sit down and eat it there. The Potbelly, I don't know that much about their food, if they're selling pizzas. I don't know that much about it, but the original intent was for restaurants to try to offset their loss of business because of the event.
I was just going to point out that if the mayor wanted to restrict a particular business who, as of right now, based on the discussion, would be included, it would have to be based on a liquor license violation, and that would have to be one of the, I guess, punishments that's handed down in addition to a fine or suspension.
Unless I wanted to eliminate it altogether.
Right. Or ask the board to revisit it and say, we just want this to apply to sit-down restaurants, excluding those like Potbelly. But that's, I think, not where we're going initially.
No, and I think I appreciate the comments because it sounds like the consensus is to allow everybody, and I agree with Trustee Scott that the Taste probably has more alcohol carried up and down the streets than we'll even ever see at this.
Well, and this, I think, will give us an opportunity to see if the Potbelly's serious about being more part of Main Street.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Involved in things. And I think this is the first step, and let's see what happens with it.
And they're a downtown business. And
Yes.
the whole idea of this whole event is to help the downtown businesses. So I have no problem at least trying
Hopefully, this will
it.
be the first start of more to come with them getting more involved in stuff.
It doesn't seem that it's, if we can improve that aura and, there's a changing of the guard there, as we all know. There's an older gentleman who's probably getting closer to retirement age and a younger guy who has some new ideas. And so let's hopefully try to embrace that.
And we will reach out and, as an educational campaign, come out with a flyer or rules or restrictions, the mayor's restrictions and what he not wants, but what he's approving, what the allowed area are, the wristbands, glass, where we'll give them some type of guidance as to what we expect as well.
And I'll be working with the special events to come up with those wristbands that we'll use. The audience, anybody who would like to comment on this, since it wasn't an agenda item that we've put on the agenda, they're more than welcome to do at this time.
I have one more
Seeing nobody,
question.
then I'll open the questioning back up to the trustees.
The alcohol will be sold inside the restaurant or tavern or whatever it happens to be, inside the building.
Yeah, the only way it would be sold outside, and we've extended the opportunity for restaurants that serve food to create a outdoor sitting area that would have to be roped off. And then they would serve food there, and then they also can have alcohol within that roped off area, but it'd have to be right in front of their business.
It's sold off the menu, though, at those
Yes,
places.
yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
So we've offered that to like, the Amber or Vincetori. Absolutely delicious, already has their outside sitting. So we've met with them and offered that. No one has yet taken that up. I know Vincetori, Bob's thinking about it. So we'll see if this week he decides to try it.
I think, if this is approved tonight, we have to really do the communication job on the businesses, because I don't see how we can get this all orchestrated and ready to go by this Thursday. So just because it's voted for tonight doesn't mean that, the restaurants understand no glass bottles go out in the street. You have to use a plastic cup. You have to have a wristband. Every business has a different band. You have to check every ID. I don't care if the person is old like me. I get to wear one of those bands.
I had to double check with the attorney. When the ordinance is passed, there's a 10-day waiting period. It has to be published, has to be sent out publicly. There's a 10-day period. So that won't fit this Thursday. It would probably fit the
So that
following.
gives us some time to, let
Get everything
businesses
worked out,
know how
yes.
it all works.
And I think appropriate-wise, I don't think that this next coming week with the police cars and fire is it's more of a family night.
Yeah, I don't see how we could even get it going.
I agree. So we're looking at, for both the parking lot and the alcohol issue next week.
A week from Thursday.
Our next board meeting.
And just a quick point of clarification on the parking lot. It's the chamber that's doing that with the coupons. It's not the WSEC. The chamber's taking that over.
They are, but requested by the WSCC.
Yeah,
Yes, they're
the
working
chamber's gonna be
together. They're working
orchestrating.
together so
Yeah.
they can
Yeah.
accomplish that. So now the motion is on to approve number 2, which is the approval of allowing alcohol to be carried out.
Motion approved, Scott.
I've got.
Oh, I already made the
again.
motion.
Not a motion
We are
and a
going to vote
second.
on it. Roll call.
Trustee Addington. Off the room.
Yes.
Well, Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
No. Good timing.
No?
No.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Barry?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Miscellaneous. Does anybody have any miscellaneous items for this evening?
No.
If not, we do have an executive session, and I know that the attorney wants to read it properly, even though I could probably do it, but we're going to make sure that we state the reasons we're going into the executive session.
Yeah, so it'd be a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel and to discuss pending, oh gosh, do you have that list?
Pending litigation.
Pending litigation. I'm sorry, my list is really small and my eyes are going bad.
And threatened.
Well, pending litigation involving Brenza, Witt, Allen, Yurta, Trout, Zeiger, Guzman, Kraska, and Gamma, and potential or threatened litigation from ADS, Divine, and Westbrook Market.
And personnel.
And I said personnel.
And personnel. So that is the reason why we're going into executive session. I need a motion.
Motion to go into executive session for the reasons stated.
Second, Barry, and I on the question, roll call.
Now stay in your seat because you missed.
Yes, ma'am, I apologize for that.
Trustee Addington.
Yes.
Trustee Barry.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Trustee Barker.
Yes.
Trustee Nero.
Yes.
Seneca.
Yes.
And we'll, after the executive session, there will be no other business conducted tonight. So we will adjourn and take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll convene executive session in 5 minutes. This meeting is adjourned.